Hi everyone, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we finally get to talk about the behemoth that is the 4090. We've been seeing memes about this thing for absolutely just weeks now. It's actually got to the point where it's quite funny. I say got to the point because at first you're just like, oh, it's another one, but people are getting really creative. Anyway, so I have a lot of data to talk to you about today. Now, I'm not going to stand here and read you all the stuff off of the press release because you are going to have seen that everywhere else probably 100 times over. So I'm going to talk to you about my experience with the card and the numbers that I've got. And also we are today for the first time trying out big vertical graphs rather than the other graphs which when I put them on the screen doesn't look very nice. So we're trying some new things today. Now, obviously, first and foremost, price. It's going to be quite expensive. It is the unicorn product, though, when you think about it. They need a very, very expensive card at the top of the range to make you think that the ones slightly lower down are more sort of in keeping and make them look cheaper. But £1,650 is a lot of anyone's money, especially at this moment in time. Now, there's also been a lot of talk about power draw because obviously that cable is capable of pulling 600 watts. Now, I'm using a Corsair power supply with one of the Corsair cables, and it's all been a bit scaremongery. You haven't got to worry about the Corsair cables specifically. And I say that because John Giroux, who works for Corsair, otherwise known in the PSU fraternity as Johnny Guru, he actually says they're absolutely fine, and if anything, probably a little bit over-spec'd. You just need to make sure that you're running a 1200 or a 1500 watt power supply to plug it into. I'm using the 1500, so I've got a bit of extra headroom. A 1200 watt is going to be absolutely fine for the 4090. If you end up going with one of the lower end cards, you'll be even easier because you'll be able to use lower wattages. Now, Nvidia do say 850 watts, but you're going to need one of these cables that then doesn't go into 8 pins and is wired in specifically. There are a few brands out there spitting out power supplies now that are fully compatible. Weirdly, MSI is one of the first ones that did it. So I'm just going to say that out loud. MSI have a power supply with the right 12-pin cable. Wired in, normal, easy peasy. Corsair have an adapter cable that plugs into their old models. And I like using the Corsair power supplies because you can use Link to monitor the power draw within the power supply itself, monitor all the voltages and the amps and all of that sort of stuff. But anyway, I digress. Size. Amazingly, it's not as big as you would have thought. It's not as long as you would have thought anyway, because it's actually shorter than the 3090. So all of those things that you were seeing about it being so big, not really that much to worry about, as you can see in the graph. And if you have a look carefully in that graph, there is an ITX motherboard and a normal motherboard sizing in that, so you can kind of work out how much it's going to hang out the end of it. But the thing with the 4090 is the fact it's triple slot, and a proper triple slot. Most people are probably going to say thick. I'm going to go with a borderline dirty word and say it's girthy. It's got some good girth going on. Now, I very, very much like the white lighting on the card because I do like white hardware and things. But one of the things I did have to do with this card was there's been a lot of attention on the possible power draw because of said cable that says 600 watts on it. Now, I would normally use Unigine on a 30-minute cycle because I can click it, I can go and make myself a cup of tea, actually get my head together and do a couple of things, write some emails and stuff in between the testing. But Unigine did not stress this card out at all. It's pulling about 400 watts and it did 51 degrees. It just was not taxing the graphics card whatsoever. It was sat there twiddling its thumbs and probably like scrolling through TikTok while it was doing it. So I've had to go and find new ways to punish it. So the new way to punish it was OCCT GPU stress test. The first one that you get to, not the complex one, flick it in, actually got it the hottest. And I managed to get it to 70 degrees on the normal GPU temp and just over 80 degrees on the hotspot. But then that was literally the punishment because I then monitored temperatures throughout every single other bit of testing that I had done for the whole card. So all of the games, all of the benchmarks, the blender runs, the whole shebang. And OCT CCT was the hottest, but it is a synthetic. The second hottest and most stressful was actually Cyberpunk, and that's actually how I ended up doing the power requirements, because this was pretty much the most power that I did manage to get the card to pull. Now, when you see these numbers that they magically spring up on the screen, and I hope you like the new graph layout, this is the entire system wattage pull from the wall. And the reason why you can see 3 bars lit up is I did want to explore whether or not, when things like the AI cores kick in and the ray tracing cores kick in, was that going to be what tipped the card over the edge? Because we didn't know. There's obviously, it's not just a graphics card anymore, or just a graphics core. There's so much more going on underneath the hood. And when you enable all those extra modules, is that when it goes absolutely nuts and starts literally sucking the electric from the wall like a kid with a McDonald's trying to suck up milkshake. And I can say it's not, weirdly, when you turn on ray tracing, the power goes down a little bit, because obviously then the graphics core is not doing so much, and like there's loads of ray tracing stuff going on instead, so it used a little bit more. And weirdly, like when you turn DLSS on, it goes down a little bit more. Then when you turn on frame generation, it goes down a little bit more again, as you can see in the graphs. And I was just like, this is actually a bit nuts. So the more things you enable, the less power it drew, which I actually thought would be completely the other way around. But the data speaks for itself, and I've got a million screenshots to be able to go with it as well. Now, when it does, obviously there's like a million games and stuff, but Nvidia did give me access to a kind of a hidden beta build on Steam, which was Cyberpunk, but with DLSS 3. And with DLSS 3, that then gives me the ability to be able to use the frame generation and see the impact that it made on the frames per second. Now, I am going to be very clear with you guys. When DLSS first came out, it sounded quite cool. It sounded like there was a possibility, if they pushed it hard enough, it could actually be a decent thing to come out. Unlike like back in the days when they had PhysX and stuff, and it was all very, very patchy. But I will say, like, annoyingly, they have pushed DLSS so hard that it's kind of almost got to a commonplace thing within the market now. Now, they always ask us to run DLSS on like performance, you know, basically the most frames per second that they possibly could do. And I didn't tell Nvidia, but we always bench with it on balanced. We've never really gone down to the quality side of it to slow it down that much, but balance, because sometimes with performance it can actually start to, if you're really picky about it, ruin the picture a little bit, and you can see a difference. So despite being told to use DLSS on performance, we've always, including every result in this, run it on balance. And please don't forget that you can go to the OC3D website to have a look at these graphs if you'd like to see more. There's lots more data over there, because in the video, if I was to give you every single graph and talk through it, we would be here for an hour, because I clearly do not script and I just brain fart this out at you. But what you can see in this graph is frame generation has quite a stark increase. It's almost twice as quick. Like if you go down right at the end of the graph there and take the white one, which is the 4K first percentile, look at the difference from just the DLSS next to it. It's actually just bonkers mental. It does have, I can understand why they want us to turn everything on to 11, because if you turn everything up to 11, really stress the card out, then when frame generation comes in, it does make a big difference. But the frame generation thing, if they get this right and they get the developers on board, it is going to push things to the next level. And I'm starting to now get into almost a place where I want to do a conclusion, but we do need to move on. So we did a lot of DLSS stuff. Don't forget, you can go and have a look at the results on the website. Another game that we used was F122. Now, the good thing about F122 is it's actually got DLSS and ray tracing and everything built in anyway. And the frame generation is built into there as well. Now, with with Cyberpunk, you have to run the Nvidia frame view to be able to accurately see the frame generation results. Whereas F1 2022, the inbuilt benchmark actually works, and the benchmark sees the frame generation as well. So the F1 2022 developers, absolutely on point. And it does just look incredibly pretty, as it always has done, but they've taken it to just like another level with the prettiness, with the ray tracing and everything now. But look at the difference in frames per second on it. It's absolutely nuts. Now, the other thing that I will say is the frame gen, yes, it does look nuts. But then if you kind of go a little bit further down, the gap before that, between the 3080 Ti and the 4090, in this title was quite slim, which was something that I was a bit surprised about. So with F1 2022, you did need that frame generation for it to take that monumental leap forward over the 3080 Ti, which was a bit of an eye-opener. Maybe it's the fact that it's not quite used to using everything that it's got available to it yet, but you know, I've said it, you did need the frame gen to do it. Watchdog Legions, this is another one where you can kind of see here that it was quite close with some of the older generation cards, and that's why I've specifically put this in, because we obviously could use DLSS, we obviously could use ray tracing, but Watchdog Legion didn't have DLSS 3, and in that I found, as you can see in the graphs, it was fairly close with the 3080 Ti previous. Now you might wonder why there's not a 3090 Ti in the graphs. You're probably thinking I've taken it out, but Nvidia did not send me a 3090 Ti Founders, so I can't retest it. And the other ones that I got from vendors, they didn't stay because a lot of the time the cards go on rotation. So that's why it's not in there. If I don't have the card still, I can't test it. So I was a bit hamstrung on this one. Maybe the 3090 Ti may have beaten it, I do not know. I'm going to show you this because it's Port Royal by 3D Mark, and in reality this was a bit of a joke in that the difference was just immense. Now the DLSS with this included the frame generation, so it's just like, it's bonkers, nuts. Yeah, sorry, no, that wasn't the frame generation. That was just pure DXR. We run, so content creation, it's obviously going to be a big thing with a card like this because of all the VRAM and everything it can do. We run the Blender Cycles benchmark so that we could do this. Now we do, you can see the results. We do have our own custom Blender benchmark, 4 million polygons. It takes an awful long time for most things to be able to render it. Now because with the 4090 we couldn't turn the main compute onto the graphics card. Every time we did, it would the program would just hang. So it's not a card problem, it's kind of a Blender problem. So we're waiting for that. With the 3080, I will say that we were able to easily turn that on and it ran fine. It's definitely just a 4000 series problem. But that's probably going to be something that in the near future, we're probably going to have a backwards test, and we're going to bring our own much longer, many stressful Blender in with, like, I don't know, we're probably going to end up having to make it like 10 times bigger than it currently is because it's 4K resolution at the moment. I think we're going to have to go absolutely nuts. But that's because we actually want to be able to proper stress test it, and I'm kind of possibly aiming that Blender might be the thing that we might use as our thermal and power test, but we're just going to have to see. Now, I've tried to keep things to the point and not waffle on about things too much, but there is a lot more data and a lot more tests available on the website. You can go and see the graphs, you can zoom in, you can try and absorb things in a different way if you're interested. So please do that. Please also, because I never say it enough, like, subscribe, comment, share to your friends and all that sort of thing. Because my angle when I do these reviews is I try to talk to you like you would a mate at the pub or nipping around your friend's house, and we just have a chat about things. So my overall feeling with the 4090 is, or the 4000 series maybe, we're not going to know, is some of the game titles are still quite close with the 3080 in the numbers that we've done. There are other titles where it screams off ahead in the distance and it's just kind of crazy. Its party trick definitely is DLSS 3 with the frame generation though, because that's really the time the frame generation takes like 3 or 4 generational leaps, because you're almost doubling the frames per second by enabling it. So if you're already kind of like well into RTX, loving your ray tracing and stuff, then the 4000 series with that enabled will really push things that little bit more. And as I've already said, we run DLSS with it on balance. We didn't turn it on performance. We've actually kind of hampered it from what Nvidia wanted to in the reviewer's guide. It's not like they ring us up and tell us you have to do that. There's just some guidelines where they say if you do this and this and this should be the sort of number that you'll be expecting. We did that and we still want it to look nice, so we're going to leave it on balanced rather than put it on like idiot performance mode. So you can make your own mind up with that. So the power draw, I've certainly not been able to get it to pull 600 watts, just the graphics card. And I'm kind of glad of that. When the card wire on it says 600 watts anyway, you're not going to want that pulling the maximum all of the time, or even for any extended time with the game going up and down. So I'm kind of glad that we were under 600 watts for the entire system. I do, however, think though that if you were to overclock it, or when you get the aftermarket cards with higher power targets and that sort of thing, you might get close. We're going to have to see how things pan out. But temperatures and noise, actually not an issue, to the point where the temperatures and the noise level on this really surprised me. I thought we'd got a massive card because it was going to get very hot. With all these extra things going on inside, I thought it was just going to be, and because I'd read stuff online as well, I did think it was going to be a hot, possibly noisy card, pulling loads and loads of power. And it's actually not. Definitely not with the way that I've tested. If anybody else has seen somebody that's got this card pulling 600 watt and maybe getting really hot with the fan spinning up, then please let me know, because I want to find out how they've done it, because I want to go and do it as well. I actually like trying to stress these things out. So overall, incredibly expensive. Yes, mega unicorn product, top of the pack. It's the sort of things that you aspire to if you've got inheritance or a credit card that you don't worry about, or somebody else is buying it for you. Does it deliver power? Yes, it can do. Definitely can do. But you really do need the frame generation to see big leaps in performance game-wise. But with the content creation side of it, that's also genuinely where it goes absolutely nuts. You've seen the blender there. It was just massively different, like hugely, massively different. I genuinely want to get this thing video encoding properly so that I can do it. And that's another thing, as I've not spoken to you about all the AV1 things, so this within like streaming and all that sort of stuff, this is going to kick things like that onto another level. I've actually dumbed this down to a very basic rate, and that's not because I'm dumbing it down for you, it's because I'm dumbing it down for me so that I can try and explain it. But it is a powerhouse. You've just got to be giving it the right things to do, and if you can do, then it will run off quite happily and just chuck all of the frames per second at you. You're just going to have to pay a premium for it. I personally, after all the hype, don't think that the power was that bad at all, and I've seen worse in the past, to the point where I'm actually kind of surprised about it. So now I do want to find out if I can make it draw more power. But built like a tank, it was much cooler than expected, didn't draw as much power as some of the hype that has been going around online, And if you are already a fan of DLSS, DLSS 3 is genuinely going to make your jaw drop. And I definitely look forward to new games coming out and being able to get this card out and put it through its paces with new games, because it's going to be absolutely nuts when the developers really get their teeth into this and drivers get mature. But deep breaths. That is it. Please like, subscribe and comment, because I don't say that enough. And please remember that you can go to the website to see lots more tests, lots more graphs and lots less waffle, because we can't type for days, but I clearly can talk for days. So thank you very much for tuning in. This has been the tiniest one with another video for you. Out. Ding! Love you, sis.